Welcome in, everybody, to Fantasy Pros. This is the Fantasy Football Podcast. It is me, Joey P, Joe Pisapia, and with me today is my boy, Pat Fitzmaurice, and it's all about the ranks. That's right. We're going to be talking about the running back ranks today for Week 6 in the NFL. We've got a fantastic guest from the Fantasy Six-Pack. I can only assume it's named after his abs. It's my good pal, Joe Bond, back on the show. I love when we have multiple Joes on at one time. It's a beautiful thing to behold. And, of course, Joe Bond, at the top of the show, I have to press the guest. Looks like we might get Skylar Thompson at quarterback for the Dolphins again this week. If we do, what does that mean for the value of guys like Waddle and Tyreek Hill?
So thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it. First things first, get that out of the way before I forget. Man, I don't know. It's going to be, I mean, clearly we're going to have to knock down Tyreek Hill and Waddle down a peg. Everybody's going to drop a notch. How much I haven't quite been able, like the news kind of dropped while I was at lunch today. So I don't know yet. I haven't been able to, go through and look exactly what Skylar Thompson did last week and see how it really affects everything. But I'm sure, without a doubt, it will drop them down a few notches here.
Yeah, certainly on the fringe of wide receiver one, maybe at the very least, some interesting matchups on the board today. And we'll talk more about wide receivers at another time. But right now, it's all about the running backs. And of course, the most important running back on the face of the planet right now in the last, 72 hours is Kenneth Walker. So we got to start with him. We're going to talk about the guys that Pat's got ranked higher than Joe. Joe's got ranked higher than Pat, what the ECR thinks, and everything in between. So let's start with Ken Walker. This week, we finally get to see him take on the full workload, or at least we think. So Pat Fitzmaurice, you have him ranked at RB11, incredibly aggressive. Joe Bond taking his time. He is at RB18. ECR kind of in between you guys at RB15. So Pat, let's talk about the upside of Ken Walker. Do you think maybe you're a little too bullish, or do you think this is just the beginning of what could be many top 10 potential finishes for Ken Walker in the future?
Oh, let's hope it's only the beginning, Joe. This is the marriage of talent and opportunity. Not only is Rashard Penny on IR now, but also Travis Homer, their primary pass catching back. And they were even starting to use Walker a little bit in a pass catching role before the Penny injury, which is kind of funny since Walker didn't really catch any passes at Michigan State last year. By the way, if he's available on waiver wires, not only does he come in with Penny hurt, but then he has, the electrifying 69-yard touchdown run just to whet people's appetites. Good luck with that fab bidding today, people. This guy is talented. He was the second running back drafted for a reason. Walker is just a terrific runner. There is going to be a boatload of opportunity here, and it's a pretty good matchup against the Cardinals. Arizona has faced tied for the fewest rushing attempts in the NFL this year, mainly because their pass defense has been so shaky, but it's not necessarily a good run defense. They're middle of the pack in most metrics. So, the Seattle offense is humming. Geno Smith has been obviously a lot better than people expected. They're putting up a lot of points. The rookie tackles, Charles Cross and Abraham Lucas, have been sensational for them so far. Everything looks great here for Ken Walker. I can't keep him out of running back one territory, Joe. As far as expected touches, I think you're looking at close to 20 this week.
It's hard not to believe that. Joe Bond, I know this is a little personal because before the show, you mentioned that you had an opportunity to pick up Ken Walker where you're making some transactions and then you went another direction. And obviously, clearly by Sunday evening, you absolutely regretted that decision. Is that what's going on here with this ranking for you? Is just a little, angry spite that you refused to put him in RB1? Or is there something maybe you didn't see? I know you had that one big run. I know we're all very excited, but do you think we should pump the brakes? Because at 18, again, you're lower than consensus, not just Pat.
Yeah, look, I know the Seattle defense is, or the Seattle offense is firing on all cylinders right now. I am pumping the brakes a little bit. The guy's still a rookie. We don't often see rookie running backs early season jump out, lightning, Breece Hall is doing well. But look, we've seen in the past where coaches are hesitant to just give the ball a ton to rookies immediately. We saw it with Jonathan Taylor. We saw, with Swift and players like that in the past who we know now are superstars. But, early season, those years, everybody's going, well, what do I do now? Like, and so, you just kind of wonder if they're going to kind of split the workload a little bit, and maybe that, that guaranteed workload that Pat was talking about might not be there. That's the hesitation I have with it. Could I throw him up above guys like that I have above him right now? Gordon, Edwards-Helaire, guys like that. Sure. I could easily throw him into like the 14-ish range and probably not blink an eye. But those guys are all, within, this many points in the projections right now. So
understandably so. All right. So before we get to the next running back that Pat is higher on than Joe, I want to tell you guys about the Amon-Ra St. Brown helmet giveaway we got going on at fantasypros.com/contest. It is available right now for you. So all you have to do is go to fantasypros.com/contest and make sure you leave a review of the podcast wherever you get your pods, subscribe to the podcast, and subscribe to our social media platforms, because every time you either leave a review of the podcast, you follow us on the social platforms, that means Instagram, TikTok, the Twitter machine, any of them, those are all entries into the contest to win an Amon-Ra St. Brown autographed helmet. Again, that's thanks to our great friends at pristineauction.com. Go check it out at fantasypros.com/contest today and go win that bad boy, because it's a good looking helmet. Speaking of good looking, Pat's got certainly a good looking demeanor about him. He also thinks that the outlook is a little bit better and good looking for James Robinson this week than some others. So RB17, Pat, you've got him. Joe's got him at 24. ECR is where Joe is at 23. We've seen a recent shift here in the last 2 weeks away a little bit from James Robinson. Does that have you a little concerned about this RB17 ranking, and it might be closer to a flex than an RB2?
I've already dropped him down to RB18. So yeah, I'm a little worried
just
that
while
I
was talking.
Not while you were talking, a little earlier. So after his season high 63% snap share in week 2, his snap shares since have been 58%, 47%, and 40%, going in the wrong direction. 23 carries in week 2, then 17, then 8, and then 10. So yeah, the trends are not encouraging, but the Jaguars won in weeks 2 and 3, and they lost the last 2 weeks. So it's largely game script related. And who are they playing this week? Jacksonville, who has been,
Indianapolis again, yeah.
Who have been calling the Jaguars daddy recently. So, this should be a close game. So I think the run game is going to be more open for the Jaguars. I think we're going to see the snap share and the carry count tick up a little bit for Robinson over where it was in the loss to the Eagles and the loss to the Texans. But yeah, it is a tough matchup, though. The Colts do have the second rated run defense in terms of DVOA, but they have a lot of the fourth most catches, although that probably helps Etienne more than it helps James Robinson. So yeah, we've seen this shifting towards more of a 50-50, and that's probably how it's going to be for most of the season. But I do think we might see a friendlier game script for the Jaguars than we've seen the last couple of weeks.
Joe Bond, the 3 first games of the season where Robinson had a touchdown, he was an RB1. The last 2 where he didn't, he was RB57 and 52 and half PPR. So are you seeing a negative trend here? Do you think it obviously continues in week 6 against the Colts?
Yeah, I do. And, I think, Pat alluded to it too. Like, this is a tough matchup. I think it's gonna be a slower pace game, so low snap counts for everybody all around in this game, and that limits the upside for any of these guys. You're gonna need one of those James Robinson 20, 30, 40 yard runs for him to really I think get much higher than 20 to 24, which is right where I've got him. And with those games, like Pat said, he was leading the snap count. They were winning those games. I'm not totally sure they're going to win this game. It's going to be close. And so when that happens, there's more Etienne involved. He's just got to catch the ball.
Yes.
Like, it's nonsense that he just can't catch for some reason. But yeah, I mean, I think I've got Etienne probably super close to that now.
I've got him right back to back in my rankings. Pat, do you have
got
Robinson
Etienne 27? So, I mean, they're right there, splitting the workload. And if one of them scores, they're going to outperform the other one by, leaps and bounds, but it's hard to predict the touchdowns with that.
Pat,
with that
do
crew.
you have Etienne in there as well, right close to Robinson?
I've got about a 4-spot gap, Joe.
Okay. All right. There you go. So the gap is closing rapidly. Maybe the gap is closing a little bit in Tampa too. I don't know. We shall see. Rachaad White, somebody that I've moved up in my rest of season rankings lately, and looking to acquire some shares on the cheap. But this week, Pat's got him at RB 34. Joe's got him at RB 38, so not too far away. ECR at 37. So obviously not too much of a variance here, but I think a player that now that we're in bye weeks, people are looking for some flex plays. So does Rachaad White for you have that flex appeal because he catches the football, because of what this matchup might be?
Yeah, he does. And the workload split has turned into about a 60-40 thing the last couple of weeks. Like the snap shares for Rachaad White almost at 40% in each of the last 2 games, and he's had 8 touches in each of the last 2 games. Now, when Fournette's in there, he gets the ball at a higher rate, like a much greater percentage of his snaps. He's getting the ball than has been the case for Rachaad White. But, White's getting some action, and the Bucs are in a favorable game script, most likely as an 8-point road favorite against the Steelers this week. And the Steelers' run defense is trash and has been for a while now. So if we see the sort of game script Vegas is expecting with the Buccaneers in command, we could see a lot of Rachaad White action this week. And I think in a 14 bye week, he's at least flex worthy or worthy of consideration for a flex spot.
He has 9 targets, has caught 8 of them for 78 yards in the last 2 weeks. He does have a touchdown as well. The matchups at Pittsburgh. Joe, what are your thoughts on Rachaad White this week? Is he somebody that's playable, especially in the PPR format at a flex if you need to?
Yeah, absolutely. Everything Pat said is spot on. It's really not a whole lot to add there to that, honestly. Because he's getting more involved in that offense. They need other weapons. They need to get Fournette, some spell Fournette every now and then. And, last year they weren't really able to do it. This year, it looks like they're going to be able to with White, as they've noticed the last couple of weeks. So I think that trend will continue.
Okay, let's move and shift gears here to the guys that Joe likes more than Pat. Joe, you've got Eno Benjamin this week ranked at RB 15. There's a lot of possibility that he could see a lot of workload with the injuries ahead of him in that running back room. Pat's got him at RB 29. So does consensus. So let's talk about Eno and that potential. Obviously, we're still waiting for more clarity in that conversation when it comes to the Cardinals backfield. But what we have to work on now is that it looks, at least in the early going, that Eno might have the lion's share of this backfield. And if he does, do you think he can live up to this RB 15 ranking you've got him at?
Yeah, so I know I have obviously ranked it with the thought that James Conner is out. In fact, I don't even think I have James Conner ranked right now. So this will clearly change if James Conner is active at all. Benjamin will plummet in the rankings, and Conner will go straight back up. Maybe not quite to where he would normally be, because there is the risk of the re-injury or just, a lesser workload to try to keep him fresh. But, Benjamin is a guy that can kind of do it all. He can catch passes, he can run. There's really just nobody else there that I'm worried about taking much of the workload from him. And so if he gets the call, I really like the potential there of just getting all of the work. So, yeah.
All right, Pat, if indeed James Conner does play, should it matter all that much to where Eno Benjamin all of a sudden becomes nothing? Because let's be honest, I mean, James Conner has had just one double-digit half PPR scoring week, and it was week 1. He hasn't done one since. He's had 6, 7, 9, and 7 points. So the volume is there, but it's not turning into productivity for him. And this game against Seattle, certainly we've seen in Seattle against the Lions a few weeks ago. We saw it last week. Seattle gets in some of these games where the total gets a little out of control. So maybe Eno has some flex appeal even if Conner is on the field. Is that possible for you?
So, yeah, I have a slightly different approach with this ranking than Joe. Like I'm starting with the assumption that Conner will play, and we, this certainly very up in the air at this point, but he's RB 29 for me, assuming Conner does play. So I think Benjamin would still be startable, kind of assuming that they maybe take it a little easier on Conner, give him a little less work. And also the fact that Seattle's given up the 5th most fantasy points to opposing running backs. The total for this game, the Vegas total, 50.5 points. We're expecting, some offense in this one. And so even if Eno is the running back 2, he at least has that to himself with no Darrell Williams presumably this week. He's going to be out. And, as far as Connor, whether he plays or not, the Cardinals did sign Tyson Williams. Everyone will remember him as the great
Tyson Williams. Yeah.
Rip Van Winkle sleeper for the Ravens in 2021 who never woke up. So the signing of him this week makes it seem as if they're preparing for Connor not being there. And if Connor doesn't play, I'm going to move Eno Benjamin up to running back 16, in which case he's pretty much a no-brainer start.
He invited Corey Clement, I believe, into camp as well. So
they did.
It's all the ghosts of running backs past. It's going to be a fun time. Who knows who might show up next?
Former Wisconsin Badger, Joe.
Yeah, we're getting closer and closer. We get enough of these guys. Maybe we could do a reality show where they all live together in an apartment for a month. Let's talk about the next guy on the list here. It's Tyler Allgeier. Now, last week, the workload was there, but he ended up having a finish pretty much like he finishes every week, somewhere around to RB 55. Now, Joe, you've got him at RB 31. Consensus at 32, very close to you. Pat's got him at 39. So obviously, Pat is not impressed yet. Why does Tyler Allgeier, Joe, deserve this RB 31 ranking in your opinion?
I think when you get down to that point in the rankings, I'm looking at opportunity, and he's got the opportunity over guys that are below him, like Mike Boone, Darrell Henderson, Michael Carter. Those guys, yeah, they're capable running backs, but we know they're second fiddle on their offense. Darrell Henderson, depending on game script. That being said, it's just there's a lot of guys there that they're not going to get the bulk of the workload, and Allgeier will. So you just have to hope it turns into something. It's not I don't feel comfortable starting him. I mean, he's 31, so that's kind of how it rolls when you get to that range of the rankings.
All right. Now, Pat, it's a tough matchup, too, against San Francisco. We all know that. Who knows what the game script is going to be here for this, but one would imagine that the Atlanta Falcons are not ahead in this one. Crazy things do happen every Sunday. However, you're a little lower on Allgeier. Why is that? Is last week kind of the beginning of that transition where things can get better, or just maybe what his ceiling might be in this offense?
Part of the reason, Joe, is that Damian Williams is eligible to come off IR this week. Now, we don't know whether or not he's going to actually come off IR. He's been out since week 1 with a rib injury. If he comes back, then we're not going to get the opportunity that we had hoped for Tyler Allgeier. But as Joe said, like if Damian Williams is not activated from IR, at least we get the very likely possibility of double-digit touches for Tyler Allgeier. And in a 4-team bye week, that might be enough to push him into some starting lineups. But, man, like even if Damian Williams isn't activated, I'm not going to move Allgeier more than like 4 or 5 spots to like the mid-30s, because the 49ers they're giving up 2.97 yards per carry, and Allgeier did not have a target last week. So, probably not going to be too prolific as a pass catcher. Tough matchup in the running game. I'd kind of be holding my nose and putting him in my lineup if I was forced to. But hey, with all the injuries and now buys, some people might be forced to.
Yeah, understandably so. And they just don't throw the ball to running backs in that.
It's a rough running back bye week too.
Oh yeah,
it really is.
Oh yeah,
Henry, Dameon Pierce. I mean, Swift was already out, but you're losing Jamal Williams. Like Jacobs. It's a rough week, man. Yeah, Jacobs too.
Yeah, it certainly is. So right off the bat, get kicked right into between. Let's get to the last guy on the list here. Joe's got Jerick McKinnon from the Kansas City Chiefs at RB 41. Consensus is at 44. Pat's a little lower at 50. Obviously, I think we're playing the total here a bit in this game, and rightfully so. So let's talk a little bit about Jerick McKinnon, your thoughts at RB 41, and how much flex appeal he might have this week for people who are looking for somebody to replace one of those many, many names that you just mentioned.
Yeah, I think with McKinnon here, I really just he's seeing a large amount of snaps, right? He's actually playing more than Clyde Edwards-Helaire a lot, which is crazy. Edwards-Helaire is just getting all the touchdowns. I mean, that's the only thing that's keeping his value up, and it's that's fine. It's gonna work. But I like McKinnon's usage and the fact that he's on the field. And yeah, they're going to be passing a ton, and he's able to, he's able to, see a large amount of targets, and he can run the ball too. Like, just in this high-flying, high-scoring game that we all expect between the Bills and the Chiefs, McKinnon definitely has some flex appeal.
All right, Pat, for you, you are lower than consensus and Joe. Joe by 9 spots, consensus by 6. So you are not that interested in Jerick McKinnon, it feels like, this week.
Well, I mean, he did look really good in week 5, and he has played 42% of the offensive snaps. He's only played 9 fewer snaps than Clyde Edwards-Helaire this season. So he is getting a lot of run for the Chiefs. But he's on the field not necessarily touching the ball all that much. He's averaging 7.2 carries plus targets per game. So not a lot of touch opportunity there. And, ultimately, he's been the running back 49 in half-point PPR this year, snuggled in between Samaje Perine and Josh Kelly. And I know people probably aren't too interested in starting either Samaje Perine or Josh Kelly this week if they don't have to. So plus, on one hand, yes, maybe this is a track meet and that has some appeal, but the Bills aren't necessarily what you'd call a good matchup for running backs. They're, I think they've allowed the 7th fewest fantasy points to opposing running backs.
Okay, let's play a little game here before we get to our listener mailbag and your questions. Joe is higher than the ECR, and the experts get to tell me why I'm right or wrong. Now, in all fairness, I did move this guy down a little bit, but not as much as he should be. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who we were just speaking about in this Kansas City backfield, he is getting all the touchdowns. He is a top 10 RB in fantasy and half PPR all year. This is, I think, going to be a little bit different of a matchup than last time we saw these two teams. No Tyreek Hill. You don't quite have that firepower. So to me, if you don't have that firepower, you got to rely on guys like Clyde Edwards-Helaire a little bit more. Maybe run the football with him. Maybe grind it out, keep Josh Allen off the field a little bit. I don't know if you want to get into a shootout with Josh Allen this season. So I had him going in right now as RB 10. The ECR has him at 17. So that is a 7 difference. So Pat, once again, tell me why I'm wrong and why the ECR is right.
Joe, you've got your Top Gun shirt, but I've got to shoot you out of the sky on this one.
Once again, my ranks are writing checks that my body can't cash.
I've got him running back 20, so I'm actually below consensus
20?
here.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's just as Joe Bond had talked about earlier, it's the lack of the lack of touches that he's kind of doing it largely on touchdowns. TD dependent value is fickle value. And he's only had double-digit carries once this year. That kind of makes me nervous. And he hasn't had more than 44 receiving yards in a game. So if he's not scoring touchdowns, he's probably not going to get it done. That said, he's probably going to score 2 or 3 touchdowns this week. And I'm going to be, you can come back and spike that on me next week, Joe.
Well, it would be nice for a change if I got to do that. Joe Bond, let's talk about Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I get it. This touchdowns certainly do matter for him. And his peak in terms of rushing attempts was at 19 every other single game. He has been under 10. But if there was one game where it's all hands on deck, isn't it this one? I mean, this is a huge playoff-like atmosphere because we're talking about you have the Bills at home. This has huge implications for later in terms of playoff seeding as well. This is a playoff game here in week 6 for Clyde Edwards-Helaire and the Chiefs.
Yeah, I agree with that. But I do agree more with Pat here, and that
everyone always
touchdown dependency really is what it comes down to. I mean, the lack of touches, the lack of yards overall for him, they're just not there. Like if he's not falling into the end zone, once, not if not twice. I mean, the game where he did only score once, he was RB 23. The games that he scored twice, he's RB 5 and 6. So he's got to score twice to get that value that you have him at right now. And if he doesn't score, 1 week he did actually have a bunch of yards, so he was RB 11 somehow. But last week only RB 53. So not looking too great for him.
All right, let's see if I could tempt you. Got the next one, Joe Bond. Travis Etienne, I've got all the way up this week at the rankings at 24. ECR's got him at 28, so not a huge difference. But it feels like the worm is turning a little bit here. 18 carries for 100-plus yards the last 2 weeks. You saw 5 targets against Houston. He finishes RB 22. I know last time against the Colts, he was a non-factor basically. But I think this is the beginning of this backfield getting to be much more competitive in terms of who's going to get the volume and who's the guy that you want in your lineup. So, Joe, we know we touched on Robinson. Is there a world where Travis Etienne surpasses him this week and doesn't look back?
I think he could surpass him. I just don't think right now either one of these guys is going to make a sizable leap over the other one. I think it's going to be a pretty substantial split, 55-45, 50-50, something like that. I mean, you're gonna see that as far as total touches. They'll be different. Robinson isn't the pass catcher Etienne is, although again, Etienne needs to actually catch the ball. That helps. But that's the role he's playing more. But he has been arguably the better runner when he gets the opportunity. They just seem to be leaning on Robinson earlier on, but it's game script. And this one, again, like I said, it's going to be, to me, a slower paced game. The over under on this one is I had it and then I lost it. So it was, it's pretty low. I believe it's in the low 40s, 42. So it's not one of those games where we're expecting, one team to score 30 points and the other one to score 20. This one's, 17-20 type of ball game. And that's not, I don't like that for either running back this week.
All right, Pat, real quick, give me your thoughts about Etienne this week and then going forward.
I'm right on ECR, but I am much more amenable to your position on this one, Joe. And, it's been game script dependent. Like this matchup might actually favor Etienne because the Colts are better against the run than they are against running backs in the past. They've given up the fourth most receptions to running backs.
All right, I'm going to leave on a high note. Let's get to your listener mailbag question straight from our Discord over at fantasypros.com/chat. Again, free to join, but when you're a premium subscriber, you get access to stages, you get access to AMAs, our touchdown contest, so many cool things. This is from N. Oliver Futt. Would you all trade Ramondre Stevenson straight up for Sutton? Their RBs are Dalvin Cook, Kamara, Ramondre, and Kareem Hunt. The wide receivers are CD, Lockett, London, and Jacoby Myers. Pat, Ramondre's got his run of the backfield. Is this the time to cash him in for Sutton, who's got a lot of red zone targets this year?
Yeah, and I think this makes sense for the this person's roster to make this deal. So, and the Fantasy Pros trade value chart says that Sutton is worth a little bit more than Ramondre.
There you go. You believe the same thing here, Joe?
Yeah, I like the I like the guaranteed workload that Sutton's going to get, even though it hasn't been pretty yet.
All right, there you go. I'm going to guarantee Clyde Edwards-Helaire 2 touchdowns, and I'm going to guarantee Joe Bond is always fun to have on the show. Follow him on the Twitter machine at F6P_Joe, and check out all his work at Fantasy Six Pack as well. Don't forget about fantasypros.com/contest. Go check it out. Get that Amon-Ra St. Brown helmet. Put it in your house. That'll do it for us, but the story of the game goes on. For Joe and Pat, I'm Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids.
Thanks for tuning in to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. Don't forget to check out our featured videos. And while you're at it, make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Fantasy Pros, so you can get the latest news and updates to give you the edge you need in your fantasy league.